It's your turn. We've got 2 microphones.
Hi, Rob. Thank you very much for your talk. Much appreciated. And thanks for being spoken out. My question is the following. Is one of the reasons why the ANC is bowing to Russia not number 1 because of finance and number 2 of electioneering and involvement in the election process next year so that we won't have free and fair elections?
Most likely. I think it's not just that. You know, the national democratic revolution and radical economic transformation and the imposition of socialist ideology fits with the Russian state of mind and where the Russians come from. So the Russians support that. But it's not really about socialism. It's just about breaking and stealing. It's about kleptocracy. And so, Anthea Jeffery, I've read excerpts of her incredible new book. It's The Road to Socialism, about South Africa.
Countdown to Socialism.
The Countdown to Socialism. And I read extracts of it, and it's a book you really have to read. For people that think there's a difference between Cyril as a reformer and the RET as the hard-boiled, nasty crowd, there is no difference. They're pushing the same agenda. It's just about who controls the purse strings. It's which group can steal more in the process. That's all it is. That's the only difference between Cyril and his mob and Mashatile and his mob. They're pushing the same agenda. It's socialism. So Russia fits the bill. Russia supports this. Russia allows them to steal. Can you imagine if Zuma had been allowed to go ahead with that nuclear plant, okay? $1 billion. It wasn't about fixing the electricity problem in South Africa. It was stealing 10 to 20% of that budget. They saw a big, juicy $200-300 million they could steal. That's all it was about. The nuclear solution was the right solution. But only if you had Korea, America, or France build it, where you can't steal. But having Russia do this, Russia hand it to you, the fact is it probably would never have been built, and they would have stolen hundreds of millions of dollars. That's all it's about. It's about stealing. They're unable to build, invest, and create, but they sure know how to break and steal.
Anthea Jeffery will be at the BizNews conference in March, BNC 6, and so will Velinkosi Hlabisa, who is the head of the IFP, and another person who's been promoted as a potential president. And just from Anthea's book and why it doesn't look like the ANC and the IFP will ever sit around the fire again, there was a people's war, which was a precluder to a part of the National Democratic Revolution, where the IFP was targeted. It's a very good few chapters in her book by the ANC prior to 1994. I worked at the SABC then, and I can tell you what we saw in Boyfatong, which we didn't tell the nation, was actually quite scary, and in other parts of and that fight was desperate, which the tens of thousands of IFP members were killed because of that. So it'll be very hard for them to overcome that. Let's get on to the questions next.
My big question: do we really want a solution?
Thank you, Rob.
Yes, we do. We do, because for the average South African in the street, they're going backwards. In the most simplest terms, our population growth exceeds our economic growth. If you just look at it that way, we go backwards every year. People get poorer. And the rest of the world is growing, pulling people out of poverty, improving their lives, and we're going backwards. We want a solution. I know why you're asking it. I could live in a bubble. I could just live in southern suburbs, Cape Town, up in the sun. Like a lot of my friends say, why are you bothering to do this? Taking all this terrible attacks and nasty stuff, mainly, by the way, from the left-wing press. The ANC leave me alone because they just want to be left alone to break and steal. So they say, no, they don't like me, but it's the Poplars and the Poplak, what's his name, and, rubbishes like that attack me, from the back. He's very ugly, by the way, I just had to say that. So we do want a solution. Yes, we do want a solution.
Good morning to everyone. I'd just like to congratulate BizNews and Alec for 10 years. Congrats. I've got a lot to say, but I'll keep it short because of time. It's not a I think the question maybe will be for Rob, but I just want to urge everyone in this room. We spoke about pensioners and old people in parliament. There's pensioners and old people in business. And I urge you to please try and, like Rob, step out of your comfort zone. Try and find young people, more particularly non-white people, who will challenge you, who will argue with you. Because if you genuinely care about building this country, it's going to require us coming together. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And what Rob was saying, I do think you need to concern yourself with the EFF, because it takes a small spark somewhere where you're not watching for things to burn. My question to you, Rob, is I've spoken on some platforms, Garrett Cliff, about the ANC being a terrorist organization today because of the destruction. Do we have a plan for when the ANC gets removed out of power? Because I do not believe that they will just quietly walk away. Do we have a plan for if the ANC or when the ANC loses power for the rest of us? What are we going to do when these guys actually come in and want to destroy everything else? Thank you.
It's a very good question. It's something that I actually am not qualified to answer. I really am not. It's something I worry about. But I would hope maybe Herman and Ian Cameron can answer that during their speeches. But it is a concern. You know, if we win, will they accept the win? And will they take it lying down? You know, you look at the taxi strikes yesterday in Cape Town as a minor issue, and you extrapolate that across the country. And then you've got a heavily armed middle-class population. You know, a lot of people in this room have weapons. I do too, are heavily armed, and we know how to use them. So look, think about that as a spark. So good question, and I don't know how to answer it. But one thing Pen and I did discuss a little earlier, and he did a very interesting opinion piece yesterday on the EFF and them and their nonsense and jumping around in the stadium and singing. And he correctly said that it's not really for me to opine on it, but more black leaders, black business leaders, civil leaders need to stand up and give their opinion. And I agree with him. We're not hearing black leaders. Where's Moss and Goshang, by the way? Feeding at the trough of the EFF, you know? Feeding at the trough of B. Doesn't say a word. Someone like him should be standing up and calling out the ANC and calling out the EFF. Do we hear anything from him? Of course not.
Hi, Rob. Hi, BizNews community. Big fan. So I'm a patriot, sorry, capitalist. You mentioned in your dream that you see South Africans like yourself who've made money overseas coming back. Could you tell us all a little bit about what the plan is to bring those ex-South Africans back? And then just briefly your thoughts on BRICS. Thank you.
Okay, so on South Africans coming back, there are hundreds of thousands that want to. And it's actually not just the young. There are a lot of people in my generation that left in the 1980s and haven't returned, that, you know, have family here, have a holiday house here, and have great memories here. And it's impossible to get South Africa out of your system. The reason people badmouth South Africa when they leave is because they're so angry, so sad that they've had to leave the country. So I don't think we need an initiative to bring them back. They just need to see the right things are happening. On BRICS, I've never really been a big believer in BRICS. In fact, I know the guy that called it BRIC, and he was pretty upset that S was added on the end. He said South Africa doesn't deserve to be there, and it really doesn't. I'm not a big believer in BRICS, but I suppose the one positive I take out of it is that, you know, India is a democracy. Brazil is a democracy. These are democratic, pro-West countries as part of BRICS. So BRICS can never really be a threat to, you know, America and Europe, in my view. You know, it's a lot of hot air, in my view. And, you know, they throw a lot of money around to try and create things. I don't see BRICS as a real competitor to the West. But I do see it as a somewhat legitimate organization that can bring value and at least shows a bit of light on countries other than America and the West. But having Brazil and India in there is a good thing. More of those countries, the better.
Final question.
Rob, what are your thoughts on South Africa becoming more than one country? So breaking up into, say, 4 countries within the next decade.
Wouldn't that be a dream? The Free Republic of the Western Cape. But as I've always said, you know, the DA isn't supporting Cape exit for good reason, because they want to save all of South Africa. Action SA the same. Want to save all of South Africa. And think about how many friends you have in KZN and upcountry that would be left to the destructive vices of the ANC if we took the Cape Independence. The only reason I do support Cape Independence is to remind the ANC that the DA knows how to run cities, municipalities and provinces, and the ANC does not. One final note before we wrap up. I just want to call out a thank you to the whistleblowers in this country who are often forgotten. These are people. These are people that have limited support, that have everything to lose. Unlike me, they have everything to lose, and yet they bravely call out evil and destruction in this country, and often are killed or injured or have their businesses or lives destroyed in the process. I want to thank all the whistleblowers for what they're doing. And I want to thank BizNews for what you're doing. Well done on 10 years.